Welcome, Jeff. I'm not sure what Jorge told you, but when I interviewed him, he was like, "Oh, you got to talk to my good friend Jeff." So I was just thrilled to have the connection because I think you're gonna really like what we've got going on. So, do you want to just introduce yourself and kind of give the listeners a little bit more about you if they don't know you,
Yeah,
although they
sure.
probably do?
Yeah, yeah. My name is Jeff Lowenfels, and I am now the author of a quadrilogy, not a trilogy, but a quadrilogy of books that are basically on soil and soil microbes. And if you're an organic person, then you or a regenerative person, then these are definitely books that you need to have in your library.
Yes, definitely. I've got them. Your books were an integral part of my learning process for the soil food web. I went to school for natural science, but really started focusing on sustainable agriculture. And your books were just a great foundation and helped me understand, complex topics in a very relatable, easy to digest way. So
Right.
definitely recommend them.
Good, 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 good. Yeah, yeah. I wrote the teaming series, for my mother, so that she could understand it, and and I wrote it for myself, so I had to dumb it down so that I could understand it, and so I think they are readable, and they really do tell a story that's been changing. And so if you've just read the first book, Teaming with Microbes, I would highly recommend you read the last book, Teaming with Bacteria, next, and then Teaming with Fungi, and then Teaming with Nutrients. The latest book describes a new loop which we didn't know existed when the first book was written. Of course, similarly, we really didn't know much about mycorrhizal fungi when the first book was listed. But this particular new phase of the soil food web called the rhizophagy cycle is key, very very important. That people need to read it, and I know people are, but not in the numbers they should be, because when I go and look at Google, it's the fourth it's the fourth best selling of the list of my books, and it really should be right up there with the top ones, because it's a very important new concept. All right.
Well, if you
Anyway,
have
sorry.
four books, I mean, it's so you want it to be number one, is what you're saying. One, no,
No,
one,
no,
number
no,
one
no,
or
no,
two.
no, no. No, no, I don't mean number one against everybody else. I mean in terms of
In your,
teaming with
yeah, in your
microbes. Everybody
quadrilogy.
reads that one. They really should read teaming with bacteria as well. It should be equally as read. I mean, it's a very important new branch to the soil food web. So,
Okay, everybody listening, that's your homework. Get it and read it, and
yeah,
then give it a
teaming with
review.
teaming with bacteria. That's right. Teaming with bacteria. Get it, read it. Teaming with microbes concentrates on what's known as the poop loop.
Mm-hmm.
The exudates attract bacteria and fungi. They get eaten by the bigger guys, the microarthropods, etc. And eventually you end up with the bacteria and the fungi being pooped out, the excess from the nematodes and the protozoa, and it feeds the plant. The mycorrhizal fungi form a relationship with the plants and transfer the food from the fungi into the bacteria in return for into the plant in return for the exudates. And then this new one, rhizophagy, the bacteria actually go into the roots and produce nitrogen inside the roots and can provide up to 40% of the plant's nitrogen. And we never even knew about it until 2017. So it's really fun stuff.
Wow.
Very, very
Yeah.
different.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing and making this education available to regular people who, aren't in college or want to read through white papers. It's
Yeah.
It's
or
great.
who might like to get stoned and you really get into this stuff.
Exactly. That's how I
Yeah,
read it. I just get, take a joint to the river or the beach, bring the book and a
there we go.
pen and take notes and
All right,
imagine
all
myself
right.
as part of the
Any
life
way that works.
cycle.
Any way that works. You got to read this stuff though. Yeah.
Welcome to the most affordable path to organic gardening excellence, brought to you by Queen of the Sungrown. Today, we spotlight an age-old secret embraced by gardeners worldwide, now made more accessible than ever. Yucca root extract powder. Envision your garden not just surviving, but flourishing, even under the harshest sun. Thanks to yucca root extract, this dream is within reach. Derived from the resilient yucca plant native to the arid regions of southwestern North America, our yucca root extract powder becomes an indispensable ally for your garden. Why yucca? Its myriad of benefits speaks volumes. It's your garden's shield against heat stress, ensuring plants remain vibrant and productive. It's a natural enhancer for nutrient uptake, making every drop of water and nutrient count. It transforms your soil, encouraging healthy growth and aeration. And it acts as a gentle yet effective pest deterrent, safeguarding your garden naturally. The secret isn't just in the plant, but in making it available to all. The saponins in yucca act as natural surfactants, facilitating critical water and nutrient absorption, while its biopesticidal properties offer a sustainable solution to keeping pests at bay. With Queen of the Sungrown, yucca's full potential is unlocked, bringing unparalleled resilience and vigor to your garden. Transform your gardening practice with the most affordable yucca root extract powder on the market. Exclusively for our listeners, use code SUNGROWN for 20% off your first order. Experience the transformative power of yucca today. Your garden will show its gratitude. Visit us at queenofthesungrown.com to discover more and claim your special offer. Queen of the Sungrown. Harness the affordable power of yucca root and watch your garden thrive. You being in Alaska, I thought, wow, this is great. Let's talk about this because there's strains and cultivars that are specifically like the Alaskan banana berry or, Alaskan thunderfuck. And those strains, I'm assuming, are bred for places maybe with, no, you're shaking your head, no.
Well,
So give,
the thing about Alaska, if you're talking about cannabis strains, our problem is we have a daylight situation. So during the month of January, for example, when you wouldn't be growing anyway, but just to give you an example, we gained how many hours of daylight do you think in January? Take a guess.
hours, you gained hours.
Yeah.
I
See,
don't
we
know.
gained
Let's see, four,
two
three.
hours, two
Okay.
hours of daylight in that
Okay.
period of time. And then in the fall, we lose 2 hours of daylight in a month's worth of time. So we've got a daylight problem, and moreover, our last predicted frost is generally, at least where I live, right at the period of time where the daylight becomes shorter than the night light. And so, therefore, the plant goes into flower. Well, that happens right about frost time in Alaska. So we don't grow based upon hardiness zones anymore. Some people might.
Yeah.
They'd be crazy because they'd be hoping that maybe they get a long, they get an extra month at the end of the season that we don't normally get. So I'm hoping that more and more people are growing autoflower plants in Alaska.
Yep.
So we've got a very unique problem, and I would imagine northern Canada has the same. Obviously, they do have the same problem. So we don't really go by varieties. Now you would obviously pick the one that has the shortest flowering period, et cetera, et cetera. But again, generally, when you're talking about cannabis sativa and indica, you're talking about really the flowering doesn't really become initiated until the nights become longer than the days. So unless you put a tarp over your growing area or put your plants inside or do something to make the night longer than the day, it doesn't really make a difference. You're not going to get a plant because you're going to get a frozen plant.
Exactly. So are you growing any photo period strains outdoors at all then, or do you just stick to autoflowers?
I just stick to autoflowers.
Okay.
Um, I mean, people otherwise in Alaska, people grow in greenhouses. And
Yep.
it's an expensive proposition in terms of the home regenerative gardener who just wants to sort of have fun. It becomes kind of a hassle. Now these autoflower plants have come to the point, and that's my fifth book. Incidentally, I wrote a book on autoflowering cannabis, which again I didn't write for me and you. I wrote it for Uncle Bob and Aunt Sally so that they could understand what's going on, and maybe dip into it and try it themselves, when nobody was looking. But yeah, so autoflowers are the way to go. They are the way to go. And if you're growing autoflowers, you still have to pay attention to what's going on, depending on the length of your growing season and the length of time it takes for that plant to go from seed to flower. So if you're living, in an area that gets uh, long season, you might be looking at a different kind of autoflower, maybe one of the so-called super autoflowers that get very tall. They take a little bit longer to grow, maybe 120, 130 days, but nonetheless flower based upon genetics, not based upon day length. So yeah, we look around for those things. Now, do I have any specific names? I don't. But there is a place that people who want to grow autoflowers should frequent, and that's autoflower.net. It may be autoflower.org now, and it's a wonderful site. And you can get on there and find people who can help you find the right strain for your area. Check it out right now. See if it's. Do you have a computer in front of you there? Yeah,
Yep.
autoflower.org. Try that.
Okay. So what is the length of your growing season? How long do you have a garden outside?
So we have a growing season that's basically 137, 140 days, and it's gotten much longer in Alaska over the past 20 years. I mean, Alaska is the proof of global warming. In 1870, such and such, the growing season was about 67 days long. It's 137 days now, and I'm predicting it'll be a little bit longer next year.
Oh yeah.
Even though we're having a terrible winter, but that's weather, that's not global warming. So yeah, so we have a very short season now. The question you want to start asking is, probably when you get down to the Seattle area, or Vancouver area, where the day length is such and the temperature is such that you can leave the plant in the ground and not worry about a frost. That's my big problem. Big disappointment for you, but that's just the way it goes.
All right. Well, I got the website up, autoflower.org. It's the
Yeah,
Autoflower Network.
yeah,
Okay. Cool.
and it's
And it's just like a
fabulous.
forum,
It's
basically.
more than a forum. It's more than a forum. It's a complete cornucopia of auto flowering information so that you can get seeds. All the seed buyers are there. You can get techniques. You can track people who are growing them that can show you how to grow. There are contests. People are growing them in the little red cups.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of fun. I mean, you can grow it now in a nice 5 gallon container, but autoflowers, if you're an old timer like me, like George, when we first started hearing about autoflower, they were a gimmick, they were cute,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't any good. Today, I would venture to guess a third of the flower that you're buying in cannabis dispensaries is autoflower.
Yeah,
It's equally as good as anything you can buy.
they've done a lot of work recently in the last 10 years, probably just breeding in a lot of photo periods into the ruderalis, the autoflower, to try to improve yield, quality. I mean, it was known as ditchweed before
Oh yeah,
because it
yeah.
evolved in, I believe, the last ice age, so that it that was when it kind of ventured off from photo period because light was limited and the environment was really stressful, and so that was like a defense or evolutionary mechanism to um,
Yeah, that's a good theory. There are lots of different theories. I mean, the other theory is that these were escape seeds from a hemp farm, in India or in Russia, because they grew hemp everywhere, obviously, for rope purposes, and they got caught in a couple of winters, and only the good ones that were ruderalis types lived. So
okay.
who knows? But they have been bred and they have been perfected, and they are really really terrific plants and so much fun to grow. If you've never grown a cannabis plant, because let's face it, 6 months is a long time. To grow a plant, particularly if you're in a place where it's not legal. Now that it's legal, it's much more you can do it without having to worry about someone coming to steal it or you getting in trouble. These ruderalis, they're just terrific. They're really fun. They're really a lot of fun.
I'm actually growing my first auto flowers right now. I'd always been just photo period gal, but
Hmm.
I'm doing a little grow along on YouTube in my dining room. I just have like a
Oh,
plant
fun.
stand with some cheap lights just to see what will happen with like minimal input and effort. And it's been fun so far. I have a 3-year old, so he goes and waters them for me, and it's
Yeah,
great.
sure. I mean, you got a plant that goes to flower in about 3 weeks. It starts to flower if you look carefully. And what's really cool about it, and I predict this in my book, and I'm still making the prediction, is at some point in time we're going to go to the nurseries in the springtime. We're going to buy our annuals. We're going to buy our vegetable starts, 6 packs, 4 packs, whatever they are, those little cells. And we're going to buy our, autoflowering cannabis. And there'll be 5 or 6 different kinds, and we'll buy a 6 pack. And, at Christmas time, we'll go in and in the flower department, there'll be little small autoflowering cannabis decorated trees. It's coming. As soon as the stigma goes away, and of course, Jorge and I have been talking about this forever. At least 40 years. We've been talking and waiting for this to happen. And it's happening slowly but surely. You don't have to move to Spain anymore like Jorge did. You can live in Alaska, it's legal, and you can have a lot of fun there. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, have you heard about the triploid seeds? The triploid genetics?
I,
Okay,
I,
so there is the grow along is actually going to be triploids versus diploid cannabis seeds. So supposedly, this is from Ben from Humboldt Seed Company. He said that the triploids will finish 2 to 3 weeks sooner than the diploids. And basically, they were able to breed, like, they found a tetraploid. So it had 4 chromosomes, and they bred it
yeah.
with a diploid. And then they
Wow.
got all triploid seeds. And so now they are releasing the OG Kush triploid, and that's what we're going to be growing next to the diploid OG Kush counterpart, and seeing how that influences, and if it really does finish 2 to 3 weeks sooner. Because I mean, for commercial growers, that'll be great with people back to back doing an auto flower photo period, and then maybe even
Right.
another auto flower depending on
Sure.
how good of a
Or you put the
season.
autoflowers in between the regular plants. But so Humboldt must sell autoflower seeds.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, that's where people should start. And I'm sure if they read the descriptions carefully, they'll get a sense of whether that particular kind of seed makes sense for their particular growing situation. I mean, some of these autoflower seeds are what we call super seeds, and they do really better outside. I mean, they really grow well. In fact, one farmer I know puts them on 2 foot centers. You get about a third more than if you grow regular sativa, regular spacing. I mean, it's so they can be quite prolific. They're really, really, and they're so much fun to grow. But again, in your grow along, yours is still photo period. We'd have to go through the frost in Anchorage in order to be able to participate. So that's too bad. That's too bad.
Oh
Ah,
man.
so
Well,
yeah,
I'll
one of these
send
days.
you.
But there's so many other experiments that people can be doing, that they should be doing on their cannabis plants that I would love to know the answers to. Not the least. Are you ready for one? Here's a good one. Um,
Yes.
so one of the things about the teaming with bacteria book, it's clear that some plants do better with vermicompost and some plants do better with thermal compost. They contain different suites of bacteria. I have not had the time to sit down because I'm traveling and giving talk to 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 test. Be kind of fun to know whether vermicompost is significantly better than vermicompost on a particular kind of cannabis. Be fun.
How would
Uh,
you like what would the variables would be the compost, but how would you control like what would be qualifying for better? Just like a bigger yield, more terpenes, higher
every,
cannabinoids?
you'd want to get the whole you'd want to get the whole suite. So you'd want to buy the same seed from Humboldt. You'd want to plant the seed, all the seeds at the same time, maybe two of each or four of each. I don't know. You'd want to early flower. You'd certainly want to see height of the whole panoply and see what the differences might be. Very well may be that you add vermicompost to regular compost in order to change the height. I don't know. I mean, I think there's just a whole suite of scientific experiments, and nobody does these experiments better than cannabis growers, frankly. Cannabis growers are, the top scientists around when it comes to growing stuff.
Yeah, it's so funny because no one else in my life and all of the different groups of friends and communities that I'm a part of, like nobody else can talk about bacteria, fungi, nematodes, protozoa like a cannabis grower. Like everyone else is like, "What in the hell are you talking about?" And we're like,
Yeah.
"No, man, the
But
protozoa,
the,
they eat the bacteria. It
But it
helps."
all that's right, and it trickles down. That's what I discovered. I mean, you could stop where George stopped. And these books are for cannabis growers and the encyclopedias, etc. Or you can carry it a little bit further and make it much more generic and show people, it's that these things are important, that we studied dinosaurs as little kids. Huh? What for? Instead of studying things that were important like microbes and microarthropods and paramecium and bacteria and fungi, which I think people are beginning to do. So, uh, in I write a garden column in Alaska, and I would venture to guess that all of my readers understand the importance of the soil food web, the importance of adding to the soil food web, making it as diverse as possible, and recognize that the soil food web alterations as they continue to add on new things into the soil food web. Uh, Make them better gardeners, whether they're growing cannabis, whether they're growing carrots or potatoes. I mean, who would have thought that a potato is coated with mycorrhizal fungi? Huh? You don't think
Yeah.
about that. Or that your roots of the root hairs in your cannabis roots are formed as a result of bacteria creating them and pushing out and being pushed out of them so that they can regenerate in fresh soil and go back in again. And it's unbelievable the stuff that's going on. So you need to know this stuff in order to be good gardeners. It's not enough. I remember when George and I first had talks about a lot of this stuff, and it was just we were organic, and we were organic because we didn't want to be poisoned. That's different than being organic because you don't want to be poisoned, but you don't want to disrupt the cycle of the plant. You want to let the plant, and then that became the soil food web. You want to let the soil food web operate so that the plant could get what it needs. And that's quite a change from when whew, woo, uh,
Oh yeah.
40 years
I
ago we weren't thinking that way.
I mean, it's crazy to think that the soil food web was supposedly discovered, and we're just putting all of this into it in only the last 40, 50 years. But it's been there, it's been existing, and we should appreciate it for simply its intrinsic value. My
Yeah.
background as an ecologist is like, that's what I went to school for. I studied with ecologists, biologists. I love watching the interaction of species and seeing how that influences an ecosystem. So when I'm teaching people, I think 2022, I traveled the country teaching the Living Soil masterclass to teach people about the significance of the soil food web and why it's more important, like you're saying, than just to even just growing the plant. It has a significant impact on our body's health, on the health of our environment. 90% of plant species have a relationship with mycorrhizal fungi, and they
Hmm.
evolved with this. And so it's like you're saying, why are we having our kids study dinosaur bones or learn about this when this is intrinsically valuable to our life and the future of our planet, the health of our planet? I got the book from Dr. Mike Amaranthus.
Oh
He
yeah.
sent me a copy of
His
his
new
children's
his
book. No, the
yeah.
kids one, yeah.
Oh,
And so
okay.
my
Yeah, yeah,
it's Mike Oriza, and it's a little
yeah.
mycorrhiza spore, and I read that to my son, and I'm just so happy that we're starting to see that
Right.
transition and change.
Yeah,
But
and
you're
we're certainly seeing a lot more. We're seeing mushrooms are now the thing.
Oh yeah.
I don't care what you are, old, young, mushrooms. They're pushing whether it's mushroom gummies, mushroom cooking, mushroom. Yeah, you name it. I mean, and that's a good thing. That's explaining to people. They begin to understand what these are, what they do. Mycorrhizal fungi. It's whew. And I remember when I wrote Teaming with Fungi, which is about mycorrhizal fungi, and they form a visible mushroom as opposed to I mean, at least the endo ones do. And it was not fashionable. It was not. My publisher had a little trouble thinking about how this book was going to sell, and didn't quite get the fact that no, 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 no. Remember Teaming with Microbes? That was, and this is Dr. Elaine's great description. That was the poop loop. This is the fungal loop. And then the bacterial is, the bacterial loop. We have these additional loops that get added on, and gardeners who understand how the poop loop works understand that they need to also get with it and learn the other loops as well, because they all work together, and together they provide that diversity. I'll give you a great example. I think I can do this. I'm sorry, this is not what you wanted to talk about, but so one of the things that happens with the bacteria is that the plant can trick the bacteria into thinking that there is a slime, a home of slime for them to live in. They live in bacteria in the root zone. They live in slime. They love the slime. That's where they get diversity and they protect themselves from the protozoa who can't get through the slime. And so the plant can emit a hormone that makes the plant and the bacteria think there's a slime there, and they back into this slime, and when they're in this new kind of slime they smell this popcorn smell, and it's really butyric acid, and they go and they break through the cell wall into this little periplasmic space, and then they do their thing in there, the razzy fazzy thing which people need to read about. I won't bore people with that all, but so that slime is out there. Okay, now come along another study, and I don't think they're aware, these studies aren't aware of each other, where they discovered methyl jasmonate, I think it's called. It's one of the plant hormones, and it was just recently discovered that a plant can use it by admitting it in the exudate out into the rhizosphere, out through the rhizosphere, past the rhizosphere zone, into the soil to communicate with bacteria and say, hey, get over here. We need you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just now, these bacteria that sneak into the plant have the capability of making that stuff. Endophytic bacteria can make a lot of these plant hormones. So that it's all tied together. And if you've got the diversity in the soil, then you're going to have the ability for the plant to attract the right mycorrhizal, to attract the right endophytic bacteria for rhizophagy, it's and to attract the right setophores or cytophores. It's the plant should be in charge. We should be giving the plant the Ritz Carlton hotel room. Well, the soil should be just fabulous. And then the plant
Hmm.
just, and it doesn't matter whether it's cannabis or anything else, and it doesn't matter what zone you're in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and then your plant is going to reward you by creating more diversity in its secondary metabolites, terpenes,
Yeah,
esters, like all of that is going to be more diverse, more robust with the more diversity we have in those microorganisms. It's the
yeah,
communication between them, and it's beautiful, and it's going to be better for, we're going to enjoy it more, and it's better for our medicine.
yeah. Well, and yeah, particularly when you start to read some of the things that Dr. James White from Rutgers and his students are studying right now. So I'm not sure I've read this properly, but I think I have. It's these scientific papers take a little while to sort of sink in, but uh, this is sort of an amazing thing. What they found is that trichomes, whether they're on cannabis plants or different kinds of plants have trichomes, these trichomes have bacteria in them, endophytic bacteria, just like the roots do. And one of the things that happens in the root zone, and again, without getting too complicated, the rhizophagy cycle results in the bacteria fixing nitrogen from the air. Now, in order to do that, they've got to have an area that's oxygen free or has reduced oxygen. So here they are in the trichome. And what reduces the oxygen? Hold it, wait a minute. The things we want in our medicine, the terpenes and the cannabinoids. They can act as the agent that enables the bacteria to to fix nitrogen, which of course the plant needs in order to grow and to be nutrient dense, therefore good. So maybe terroir comes from these bacteria, not from the soil, but from the seed, which contains the bacteria that jump out into the soil, grow as the plant grows, and go into the plant, feed the plant, and move throughout the plant, not only getting into the new seeds, but also producing these plant phytohormones. It's an amazing system. And if you're just eating the carrot that you grow without understanding this, or smoking or vaping the cannabis that you grow without appreciating this, you're missing out on 90% of the beauty of what you've got in front of you. I think that's sort of where I come from, and I'm sticking
I
to it.
agree. I agree with you. I think that it is so important, and it's exactly 90%. I mean,
Yeah,
being able to have this relationship with it's not just a cannabis plant. You have millions of different organisms growing with you with this plant. It's the whole ecosystem, and just being aware, observing, and it's beautiful. It's a magical
yeah,
spiritual
yeah,
connection. So, I
yeah,
agree with you
yeah.
100%.
And you can manipulate it. I mean, we do. We add compost teas and compost extracts, and we use compost, and we use different kinds of microbe foods. I don't call them fertilizers. Or you can put as much of that stuff into your compost and get the best compost you or vermicompost or both that you possibly can, and let the plant do all the choosing. So you got it both. Where we
Hmm.
make the mistake is thinking we're in charge. No, we don't want to be in charge because we're not capable of doing what that plant has evolved to do over these millions and millions of years.
Oh yeah, when people are trying to ask me questions, oh, help me with my plant in my little 5 gallon pot inside. I have this pH, this ppm. I'm feeding this, and I'm like, dude, if you just planted in a largest volume you possibly could of really high quality soil, and I don't mean potting
Yeah,
mix of
yeah,
cocoa and peat.
right.
I mean like with rich compost, preferably in the ground. Like
Right. I'm gonna.
I'm a native soil, plant in the ground if you possibly can, because you're like, I've looked at hundreds, if not thousands, of soil samples under the microscope from all of these
Yeah.
folks, students who came to
Sure.
the living soil class. And the
Yep.
samples that were native soil were the most robust. They had obviously the most minerals, but way more diversity in microorganisms, way more population count. And it was just like look, you guys, plant outside if you can, use compost if you can. It's not like that hard. You're overcomplicating it, and the problems that you're seeing in your plant are because you're trying to control what your plant gets, and it's done it. Plants are much older than humans, so let them do
Yeah.
their thing.
Yeah. I always laugh when I go to one of the big box stores, and I go out in the yard. I see all of the, they might have 50 different kinds of potting soil composts. All half of which are made by the same company, which is interesting. People should learn to make their own, first of all. That's the basis. They should make their own. We're violating the law of return as it is by taking things from plants, flowers, fruits, um, cleaning things up. That's all that stuff is silly. All that stuff's supposed to go back in and become decay. We should make our own compost, and you should think about using compost that's or growing plants in compost that's made from those plants. That is
Mm-hmm.
an interesting exercise as well. I mean, because if you think about it, that cannabis crop where you're just keeping the flowers, the rest of it, if you don't let it get decayed and go back into the soil for one reason or another, you're growing in containers, who knows? If you compost that, the bacteria and fungi that associate with that, the it feeds the plant what it wants. And I always tell people, don't throw soil away. You reuse it. Don't pull the plant out of that 5-gallon pot. Just cut it, plant the new plant right next to it. The roots will grow down through the zone, through the very area where some of the old roots have decayed. There are all the bacteria that have been attracted by the exudates from a cannabis plant already there. So you should reuse that stuff. Soil is key. Compost is key to making great soil. There are millions of different recipes. It's got to be alive, and it's easy to make soil, and it's silly not to. And you need to test. That's another thing people don't do. I write this garden column. It's the longest running garden column in history. Uh, I'll bet you my readers have tested 5 times. Maybe 5 readers have tested. That's what I mean to say. There's a new test out called a microbiometer. I work with these people. It tells you whether you're increasing the micro mass, which correlates with nitrogen and minerals. It correlates with healthy plants, and it's the coolest system. It's a little bit of chemistry right there. You shake it right out in the field. It's a little bit of magic. You read it with a drop of from with a cell phone, and boom, it tells you what you have. It gives you your fungal bacteria ratio. It tells you what the pH is, and it also tells you whether you've got good microbiomass, low microbiomass, whether your microbiomass has changed as a result of what you may be feeding your plants. People, again, willing, I'll just feed the plant. It might not need stuff. Uh, who- you
Mm-hmm.
know, you need to do testing. So that's what the microbiometer does. And every now and then you need to get a good NPK test as well. Not every year, but every now and then, just to see what's going on and how things are trending. See, it's
I
getting
have a
pretty dark in here.
microbiometer. I know. That's
Yeah,
that Alaskan light, right?
it's tough. It's tough. It's definitely tough.
So I have the microbiometer. I need to use it more. I've only done it
Yeah,
twice. And I always have NPK strips just to do baseline testing at home. I need to test more like with the labs though. I
yeah.
just, you know, It is one of those
Yeah,
things. I
that's
always
what
tell
people. But
people too, but
information is power, and we need to do it. We're lazy. We don't.
I
I mean, then again,
know.
if you're a home gardener, if you're a home gardener, home grower, what you get may be good enough. It's sometimes you don't have
Exactly.
to be crazy nut. You have sometimes what you get's good enough.
So you said a few things in there that I want to touch on. So the law of diminishing return and how that is something I've been preaching and preaching and everyone should be composting. Like 40% of the landfill could be composted at home. There's no reason, like there's 8 billion people, let's all help out a little bit. Let's compost. But you being in Alaska, I do have questions. You're involved in the gardening column. If this is something that I have just, it's been like extrapolated in my mind, but I read that basically because the salmon runs have been doing so poorly due to whatever is going on in Alaska, climate change, that the forest healths are the health of the forests are actually diminishing because there's less
Yeah,
nitrogen now in the soils, and so
yeah,
it's increasing forest fires because, and it's all connected together. That law of diminishing return, we're not putting back and giving back what the ecosystem is used to. Do you
yeah, yeah.
know much about that?
Well, a little bit about it. I call it the law of return. What falls down from a plant is supposed to fall down from a plant. Obviously, same thing with a fish. When a fish dies, it's supposed to die. And if you don't have fish to die and plants to fall down, then you're not having the system fed. We have a real problem in Alaska. And it's probably caused by temperature. It increases. We have it used to be when you said the word Alaska to people, summertime, they would automatically think of a mosquito flying, a little dog around, and eating it. We don't have mosquitoes. No mosquitoes. If you don't have mosquitoes, you don't have fish, and so we don't have salmon. And so it's all tied together. No question about it. It's all tied together, and it's a serious problem because it may impact me as a sports fisherman, but it impacts people who live on the Yukon River as subsistence fisher people, and then it's serious. I mean, I can go buy a fish, they can't, and so we got a problem, and it is all tied together. It's all related to this stuff, and paying attention to the soil food web certainly is one way to help the help fix the problem. It's not the cure to the problem. We're losing inches of soil every year. Um, you've probably heard there's a UN report. I think it says we have 60 years worth of soil left. Well, that translates into 60 years of soil harvest, food.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's pretty scary. So, and then of course you can't turn around without hearing about uh, microplastics and plastics. Well, gee willikers, look what we do on a grand scale. In order to prevent weeds, we lay down miles of plastic, poke hole in them, put a strawberry in it so that it grows weed free. What happens to that plastic? What about the plastic pots that you use? Our plastic buckets? Our society's based on plastic. So we got a lot of work to do. I mean, a lot of work to do. And one of the questions you were going to ask me, and you probably are still, is organic, regenerative. When Jorge and I started out, we were organic. That's what it was. We didn't want to poison ourselves. Regenerative to me brings in society. It's a question of not poisoning other people as well. It's doing things that your employees need you to do so that they are protected. It's not just the soil. It's not just making soil, which is a little bit different than organics, which is just using good carbon organic material on soil. So there is a difference, and I think everybody is tending towards the regenerative. They should be. Nobody should be using chemicals that are bad for soil and for you and me. We shouldn't be spraying. We should be looking for solutions to things like flying around on airplanes, which is probably why we're doing it this way instead of at a big conference. And using plastic pots and plastic greenhouses, all of the stuff we have to start to address, or our kids aren't going to have that ability to do so. It's hard to do, and we won't be successful right away, but we need to do it. Doesn't matter who's president, we need to do it.
Oh yeah, definitely. We just left the last epoch, which was like the Holocene, I think, or something,
Yeah.
and they were debating what to call this next epoch, and they were like Anthropocene or Plasticine because you can see the plastic in our like the geology of the Earth's crust. There's just like a line of plastic covering the
Yeah,
Earth.
yeah, and it's everywhere. It's in the air, or when they plow, when they till and whatnot on the soil. It just blows up all last year's plastic. It's in all the potting soil that you buy. It's probably in your compost. It's in your water. It's everywhere. We got to start addressing it. Who knows whether it's even going to work? But if we don't, we're in big trouble.
I know, but that's what we're doing out here, fighting the good fight. And there's a lot of people out there that are paying attention and trying to learn because it just starts with learning. So many people just
Yep.
don't even know. My grandparents are like, oh, we're too old and it's just your generation can fix it for us. I mean, they still use like, what is that spray bottle to kill the dandelions in their lawn? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what
Yeah.
are you
That
guys doing?
Yeah, not realizing, of course. I mean, I'll give you the answer, but they don't realize that that spray is drifting a mile or so away. Some poor person sunbathing and breathing that stuff in, which is probably okay because that person's probably using some bad sun lotion that's killing off the algae. Oh my God, it's just it's a terrible. Here's the answer: read the quadrilogy, teeming with microbes, teeming with bacteria, teeming with fungi. Those are all how plants get their nutrients, and then teeming with nutrients, what they do with the nutrients, how they get inside the plant, and what happens to them when they get inside the plant. Because you need to know that as well, because you're eating that plant. I always say, and maybe we gotta end this, but you may not be a vegetarian, but that cow that you're eating is a vegetarian. So it's pretty important that you understand plants.
It really is. And I have a question for you that
Yeah.
um I'm just thinking now with I get a lot of questions about IPM in flower, outdoor
Hmm.
growers, the bugs, all of these things. And I typically use things like biocontrols. So,
Hmm.
like bacillus, a blend of 5 different types of bacillus bacteria or 6 different types of trichoderma. Um, what are your thoughts on using those biocontrols on flower all the way up? My thought was from reading your books, well, the bacteria, fungi, everything is all around us anyway. So if I'm spraying it on, I mean, sure, I could be increasing moisture, humidity, maybe there's mold, but trichoderma is super aggressive, so it should outcompete for botrytis, technically, in all of the studies I've read. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you got to be careful with trichoderma. You got to be careful in terms of what it does to the mycorrhizal fungi, which you want to keep. So you don't want it in the soil. Um, it's fun that you mentioned the bacillus because regular gardeners are just beginning to learn about it. Cannabis gardeners, bacillus. Wow, yeah, there's 3 or 4 different kinds. They work. They do terrific things, and of course, they learned it from farmers. The first was South America and India. Everybody has their own bacillus that people have hybridized and worked into a formula that can be used. These are phenomenal things to use. The problem is you have to be consistent. You have to be careful. You have to think about what you're doing. I mean, if you put this stuff down and then you spray with neem, oh, wait a minute. Oh, did that neem kill it? You know what I mean? You got to be thinking about the stuff. And then the other thing is, you have to adjust your ethics. Sometimes you get something on a flower that you're not going to be able to get rid of. Yeah, sure, you can kill it. You might be able to trick somebody into thinking that's beautiful flower, but it may still have that, terrible fungi in it, asperilla, whatever, that you don't want people to breathe. And as Dr. White says, incidentally, you should take a look at the fungi that are on broccoli before, as a cannabis regulator, you decide to regulate cannabis fungi. But in any case, uh, all of these biological things, phew, that's the way to go, and that's the way the chemical people are going. Everybody's going that way. The Bayer people, Monsanto, you name it, everybody's going that way. God bless it. Let's do it, because that's the way to go. We're gonna have plants that are going to fertilize themselves better internally, that are going to definitely use endophytic bacteria and fungi, which are internal, to produce phytohormones that are going to fight off things. All of these things are happening right before our eyes. And gee, if we were to have this to talk next year, there'll be commercial products people will be able to buy. They'll be able to do this stuff. So
Oh
there
yeah,
you go.
definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Before we end, do you want to just give us a little bit of a background, like cannabis? Like I've read your story that you used to use like Miracle Grow, and then you transitioned because you wanted to, like you said, you wanted to not poison yourself, and you were growing organic for that, and then it's evolved into this whole book series and lifestyle. But where does cannabis connect into that? Like, have you always just grown cannabis and loved weed like um myself, or was this, how did it evolve?
Well, now that my parents are no longer living, yeah, of course, of course, I've always enjoyed cannabis, but um, and incidentally, I live in Alaska, where it's been legal in the privacy of your home since 1975, so that the stigma is gone. And as the stigma falls in all these states that have made it legal, you know, I think people are going to find that this is a very interesting era that we've entered into. But um, yeah, I've always wanted to grow my own, because that's the way you know that you've got pure cannabis. I'm of the age that I worried about Agent Orange, and people, that was you went to the movies, and before they put the movie on, they scared the hell out of you that if you smoked weed, you'd be breathing in somebody's, who knows, I mean, it was and so if you grew your own, of course, then you had something. The other thing wasn't that easy to find, and growing your own meant, of course, that you could have a supply. People didn't know about it. Um, George and I have a friend named Tom Alexander, who you ought to have on the show. Tom
Okay.
Alexander basically coined the term Sansamia tips. I mean, we didn't know. We thought you could smoke the leaves. That was, and people did, and they got stoned, even though they were really not stoned. But uh, and so there was a real evolution, and it was fun to be part of it. Um, people, you see somebody who's in their mid 70s, chances are they were there when it was happening, and we watched it, we continue to watch it. It's a fascinating evolution, and yeah, I mean, I enjoy it quite a bit. I don't drink. I take arthritic medicines that prevent me from drinking, and yeah, this is my drug of choice.
Oh yeah, man, me too. I love it. And do you have you been celebrating 420, or do you celebrate 420?
I just, whenever I feel like smoking, I do it because I'm
Well, like the
retired.
date,
Uh,
like
oh,
the
the date
like
420.
April. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think we all do. I mean, we all laugh, and have a daughter that was born the day before. Kind of tease her, but yeah, I mean, again, uh, it's fun. It's fun to get together with Tom Alexander and George Jorge, and just laugh and think about what's happened. We call ourselves the Three Musketeers, Three Amigos. How things have changed, how much fun it's been. Uh, we could tell you stories. We don't want to get in trouble.
That's the thing I love about cannabis is when you find your people, this community is so welcoming. It doesn't matter the differences in life you have, you can all get together over a joint, pass it around, and you'll find that common thread and be best friends by the end of that joint. So,
Around the world, around the
yes.
world. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be in Montserrat in the Caribbean. You could be in Russia. Doesn't make a bit of difference. And usually, if you're good enough, you can tell. So that's kind of fun.
It is. Well, thank you
There you
so much for having the taking the time to talk with me, and I will definitely send you the episodes as they come out with you in them featuring, and link all of your books. Is there any other links that you want me to include in the show notes or anything like that?
go. And I'm thinking I'll plan a role for the hungry. People
Oh
should
yeah, we
grow.
didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, people should grow something to donate to the hungry. Now, in the case of cannabis, grow something to donate to a needy veteran. Somebody that needs it, because there are people out there that would appreciate your medicine, or just set one pot aside, grow some potatoes or some carrots, and make sure somebody gets it, because that's what gardening and growing things is all about. Sharing.
It is. All right. So is that an actual like George told me about this, the plant
Yeah,
a
there's a
row
thing
that
called
you
plant a row for the hungry. Yeah,
plan a row for the hungry. So people can
yeah.
look that up. They can participate just to like talk to other people who are doing it. Is there like
Just
would you just take it to the food bank or
Yep. Just there's no rules. Nothing slips between the lip and the cup. No administrator. None of that crap. This is
okay.
you growing something. You take it to a neighbor. You take it to a vet. You take it to a church, synagogue, wherever somebody might need whatever you're growing. And if you got room to grow extra food, awful lot of people go to bed hungry every night. They need it.
And I would even take that a step further. And if you can prepare it in any way, like
Oh,
canning, I noticed that at the food banks, a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables go bad because people don't know how to cook nowadays or
yep.
they don't have the ability. So if you can make extra tomato sauce, can it, bring it, drop it off, like anything that will store for a long time, that's also like a great thing to think about. My 2 cents.
Super.
Let it come in, choosing her sin every morning, choosing to be sad.